Same thing for you, JT, but maybe just broadening it out a little. You said earlier on that you felt this was something that could be replicated in different parts of the country, in different situations. But what I recognise, knowing you and having listened to you on this, is you do have a very particular vision and you do understand the needs of those people. It's going to be very difficult just to replicate it unless we have people in those areas that have something, not doing it exactly the same way, but have something of the same vision and of the same heart as you. Do you see ways to communicate and share that?
In terms of communicating and sharing that, I suppose this is one of the ways.
Yes.
Me being on your program talking about it. Because there are an awful lot of people who have a heart for youth and for seeing them come to faith and be disciples. But there are a lot of mistakes made because, for whatever reason, right? And many of the mistakes are to do with, for instance, lack of patience. Churches will often make the mistake and think that they'll pay someone full time and suddenly their youth work is going to be fine within the first year. That's not going to happen, sorry. Or they'll somehow, they might throw some money or no money at a project. In fact, I shouldn't have said that, because we don't even call what we do a project. Because that's just mad language for us. But at a youth work, and think that's magically going to do it. You've got to have heart. You've got to have patience. You've got to have sweat, blood and tears and be committed to doing that. There are no shortcuts. I'm telling you now, there are no shortcuts. You will cry the cries of defeat sometimes. But if you're working with young people, all I would say is if you love them, if you really do care for them, you can get away with murder, in the sense of, you might not be able to do an eternity night like us with DJs and lights and stuff like that. There were lots of times when we couldn't do that, but we still continue to care and have input into their lives. And that's what carries you through, is the commitment to them as individuals. Yeah. And there's lots of other stuff as well that goes with that, but that's what carries you through. And patience, 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years, not first year magic. Doesn't happen.
One of the interesting things, and come to you maybe first on this, James, and you've both mentioned work abroad, and that, I mean, at the moment these programs are going live to Africa. Mm-hmm. Now,
Mulashani.
Go on.
That was Bemba, Zambian for hi, how are you? Le Samapale, God bless you.
Habari.
All right, they're all going to start talking in your language. It's just going to be like the day of Pentecost all over again. Welcome, everybody that's watching. But the thing I really wanted to help is we've got a lot of young people in this country. They can't just go over and expect just to say, this is what you do and how to do it. The very thing we've been talking about, leadership, not doing to young people, you can't just do with young people in a different country. How do you prepare your young people for mission?
I think you have to, like you said earlier, I think, Doug, you have to take things in steps. I think all young people will have the opportunity at some point or other to come up against people who believe something different, people who know things different. We live in a very, very cross-cultural society, which is fantastic, because it allows young people to experience very early on that there are people very, very different to them in their culture, in their upbringing, in their beliefs. And I think, just as we've said already, if mission is to start in the next street, then young people, as they are filled with the Holy Spirit, as they become Christians, as they engage more with this Christ who did so much work amongst lots and lots of different nations, as they do that, they will undoubtedly come up against situations where they'll have to express their faith with somebody who hasn't experienced the same as they've experienced. It's the same thing that we teachers are going through, that we're having to explain and show our faith and express our faith with young people who haven't experienced what we've experienced. And so I think in many ways it comes in steps. It comes in gradually, and we need to train them early on. We need to give them confidence to speak about what they believe, to attest to what they believe, to stand up for it, and to believe in their own hearts in what they believe. Now, I know that sounds somewhat circular, but sometimes it really does take somebody to say, all right, yes, no, I actually do believe this. I'm not just regurgitating this. I'm going to stand by it. It works for me. I believe it, and it's good. And I think from that point, we need to give them confidence to stand up saying that in front of people who don't believe it. And in this postmodern world, that is quite a challenge, where the biggest intolerance, of course, is intolerance. And,
yes.
And so that will wrap it. I'm sure that will increase. And I'm sure then the challenge will also increase. And we, as Christians, are going to have to find ways that we can draw on the strength of God to deal with that.
Mm. You talked already specifically about going out to Africa, and I know you go, JT, and you've obviously taken young people before. What's the reaction over there, and what's your desire in going over there?
Well, in taking young people out there or sending young people out there, my purpose in that is for the young people themselves to learn from the enthusiasm and the faith and the passion of the Zambians that I know, but also to be able to contribute into the churches out there that are only now learning what it is to be Christian in what you could call like a Western civilization. So for instance, Lynchy, one of our guys, went out last year. Now, he had a fantastic experience, and I've got to say, credit to him, you know, he learned more words in Nyanja than I've ever known. He could hold conversations with people on the street. He lived with Zambians. He was completely immersed in the culture. What an experience for him. But in doing that, he gained immense street cred, but also he used the principles that we'd learned in Tribe to build a youth work up from a half a dozen kids who were bored and fed up in the meetings to about 70 or 80 before he left, which indicates that some of the principles are transferable. So it's a two-way thing. It is a two-way thing. And Zambia is much more Christian than we are, and evangelical Christianity is much more on the surface of society, and faith is much more an obvious part of people's lives. So that's a great thing to experience. The worship is exuberant, and faith is just a key part of everyday life. But he also went to contribute. So it was a two-way thing, and I think that's the value of engaging with people different from yourself.
But we have to be very careful sort of going into such situations and simply saying we've got all the answers, we know exactly how to do it, and this is the way you're going to. We have to be so. In other words, you've both mentioned it, which of course it kind of. You've mentioned the heart, you've mentioned relationship, mentioned a love for the people, and your desire for the best for the people who they are, where they are at that time. And we have to be so careful that we don't just give them the ready-made Western diet and say, that's it, guys, if you do this, everything will be all right. Because it's not, is it?
No, absolutely. And I know what Lynchy did when he was in Lusaka, which is the capital of Zambia. The young people in the church, like urbanized young people everywhere, are different to their parents. Quite different, you know. They listen to different music, they communicate in different ways. They're communicating in ways that many of their parents just can't understand, you know, Facebook and the internet and whatever else. And what Lynchy did was create, if you like, a relevant culture and way of communicating the gospel, which rather than it being just in the forms and the words which they'd experienced when they were younger, suddenly it was fresh and made sense for them. He input into them individually, got them serving in different capacities and whatever. So this isn't an easy thing. It's not a thing which comes automatically. But if you do love them, and if you do draw them into engagement and service, you'll see results.
Just read this to encourage you, James. It's from Linda. Hi, I like this young man. I think he must be talking about you. I don't think he'll be talking about JT or me. If he was around 25 years ago in my church, I may not have had to wait until I was 34 to be a Christian and would not have made a mess of my life. Thanks, James, for the work you do. So there we are.
Thank you, Linda.